I can remember Denis Law scoring a goal. It must have been back in 1967 when United were vying for the league with Nottingham Forest. I don't know how he did it, but there was a scramble in the goal area of the Nottingham Forest end, and Law did an overhead kick, put the ball in the top right-hand corner of the goal, which was a 1-0 win for United, which put them then on top of the league, a couple of points in front of Notts Forest. Absolutely fantastic, unbelievable.
Fantastic. And could you tell me what it says about his career that he could be so successful at Manchester United, but having already played at Manchester City?
I think, well, the reason he was successful at Manchester United, between Manchester City, he went to Italy, and I think having that break from City made the occasion just right for him to come to United at that time, and he fitted into a great team.
Great. And what was he like in the Holy Trinity alongside Best and Charlton?
Where do you start? It was part and parcel of it, and they were like triplets. They knew where each other was without even having to look for each other. It's unbelievable.
And just last one, how important was he, along with Best and Charlton, in rebuilding the United squad after the Munich plane disaster?
He was like the last one that was needed. Busby had built a team, but he needed someone who could score the goals for him then. And when he came along, bang, jigsaw finished.
My favourite Denis Law memory was on TV. United played Tottenham, Old Trafford at the time it was the Charity Shield, and the football played between Bobby Charlton, Denis Law, and Brian Kidd was unbelievable, and I got hooked on that really. So,
can you tell me what it says about his career that he could have played for Manchester City before and be so influential at Manchester United after?
His main years were at Old Trafford, so when he went to City was his twilight sort of a career. His main stay was Old Trafford, so the fans love him for that really.
What was he like in that Holy Trinity?
He's the main man. I mean, Bestie, God bless him, fantastic. Bobby Charlton. Well, Denis Law was Bestie's best mate, and Denis Law sort of knit together with all three great players. So we can't really.
And last one, how important was he, along with Best and Charlton, in rebuilding that Manchester United squad after the Munich disaster?
Bobby Charlton was the main fella for that because he was part of Munich. So Bobby Charlton and Denis Law came after, but Denis Law helped United win the first trophy back at '63 against Leicester. So Bobby Charlton was the main fella for that, to keep the Trinity going.
Oh, well, I don't know if it's my favourite. It's certainly my most memorable was when he backheeled the ball into the net that contributed towards us going down in '74. So it wasn't a favourite, but certainly memorable. But just generally, I mean, you know, I've watched him in loads and loads of games, and it's just, the guy was a genius with the ball. It was, you know, but I also watched Charlton put a ball in. All three of them were just fantastic to watch.
Can you just hold that mic a little higher?
Yeah.
Could you tell me what you think it says about his career that he could have played for Manchester City and then come here and be so successful at Old Trafford?
What I think about his...
Yeah, like what does that say about his career?
Well, I can't. I mean, from my point of view, we were just glad to see him at United. So, you know, there's not many can cross over from, I mean, like Cantona from Leeds. But it's what you do here. I don't care what you did for City. I mean, obviously, the guy was a great footballer, and he was great for Aberdeen. He was great all round, and he was great for Scotland. But all I care about is what he did for United. And what he did for United was help us win, certainly like the '63 FA Cup. He was the man. You know, he made the difference. So.
And what was he like in that Holy Trinity?
Well, it was a linchpin between the three of them. I mean, you know, there was a linchpin between all three of them. And also, from what I've listened this morning to Nobby Stiles' lad, You know, he had the sense of humour. He was the one who kept it all together. But they all linked up together. You know, you can't have one without the other. It's just how it was.
Fantastic. And just lastly, how important was he, along with Best and Charlton, rebuilding that Manchester United squad after the new disaster?
Well, he came a little bit later. I mean, I think Bobby Charlton was the one who really made a difference there. But I mean, obviously it was important. I mean, the team itself, I mean, you know, it's not bad when 10 years after the Munich air disaster you can win the European Cup. You know, unfortunately he didn't play in that, but well, and I think that's probably something that he'll have rued all his work, all his playing life. But you know, he's just a major part of that team. Just a major part of that team. He was the scorer. He was the man for scoring.
For me, Denis Law moment, probably, I won't say the favourite one, but my most memorable one as a young lad is when he backheeled it against Stepney. For what a lot of people say is he sent United down, but that's just a myth, because Birmingham City won that game anyway, and had United even beat City that day, we would have stayed up. Got relegated rather. But I just remember I was stood right near the tunnel in the paddock, and could still have that memory of him coming off with that down and out look face really that he had. Yep.
Just going to adjust this. Sorry, can you tell me what it says about his career and about what the sort of player he was, that he could have a career at Man City and then be so successful at Old Trafford?
Just a complete all-round centre forward, really. Scored plenty of goals, hard as nails. Was not frightened of getting stuck in, and wherever he played was just he turned it on as a centre forward.
What was he like in that Holy Trinity?
For me, he was the king. We had the Prince in Best. Not too sure you could call Charlton, really. Obviously, Charlton was the guy that survived the Munich air disaster. But yeah, the Prince in Best. But we had the king in Denis Law, yeah, for the Stretford.
And how important was he, along with Best and Charlton, in rebuilding United squad after that?
I think the importance of the rebuild was down to, really not down to him, but down to Busby. Really, I think Busby could see potential players that he could acquire from clubs. Obviously, Law was at Torino at the time, not really bagging many goals because the way Italian teams played, he wasn't getting them opportunities. So, but yeah, very important part of the 63 Cup final win, and going on, even though we didn't play in 68 through injury, a good sort of model within that unit. Yep.
The one thing I remember about Denis Law is the day he signed for Manchester United. I went both to Old Trafford and the Cliff training ground to watch him sign and go through the medicals. I've got his autograph one of 4 times that I got on the same day. He come in a taxi and went home in a red Jaguar, just like what Morse had. He was my hero. And always will be.
Oh, that's brilliant. I've got another question there, if you're happy to answer. So, what was he like in that Holy Trinity?
What, as a team player?
Yeah, so like in that 3.
Yeah.
What was it?
Okay. Well, Denis Law in the Holy Trinity, everyone used to say, Law, Best and Charlton. The Ballagno, 3 players at one team, it'll never be done again. He was a fantastic gentleman who I've met a number of times, and is a fantastic player for both Manchester United and at the end Manchester City.
You mentioned him playing for both teams there. What does it say about how good he was, that he is loved by both sides?
Well, he only played for City right at the end of his career. You know, it was something he wanted to do, but he didn't relegate. Well, I'm talking now, what? Yeah. Denis Law didn't relegate Manchester United. They was already mathematically relegated. But the last ball that he actually kicked was to score the goal, and he never played football again.
And just last one, how important was he, along with Best and Charlton, in rebuilding the United squad after the Munich disaster?
Yeah. Well, after the Munich air disaster, I was 7-year-old at the time. And my favourites was Duncan Edwards, Tommy Taylor, and Peg, who lives round the corner, who's buried round the corner. They started building the team with the likes of Bobby Charlton, who survived the Munich air disaster, and then Denis Law was signed for 116,000, which was a world record fee. His agent was D.G. Perrance, and he negotiated it. Absolutely fantastic, and slowly they built the team up. And they always used to say about Denis Law that he always got sent off near Scotland's Ogmany, so he could go back to Scotland and have a good drink with the rest of them. And look up, and his favourite player to fight with was another Scotsman called Ian Yeo, who played for Arsenal.
For me, it wasn't as a player. He was commentating on a match between City and United. He was one of the pundits, and I think it was 1993, and City were 2-up at half time. And they came back to the studio and they said to Denis Law, "What do you think is going to happen in the second half?" And he just started laughing because he was sat with Mike Summerby, the City player, and Mike Summerby said that he expected City to go on and win the game. And Denis Law just started laughing and said, "No, something's going to happen in this match." So that was, he wasn't really... I started watching United in about 76, 77, so it was after his time as a player. But, my dad and all my older uncles and family and friends, they all sort of watched him as a player. Yeah, so...
And sort of, what's your understanding of how important he was in that whole Trinity?
Well, nobody could beat him in the air. My dad always used to say about the fact that he seemed to be able to hang in the air, and he wasn't a big guy. When he first came to play in England at Huddersfield, they didn't think he was going to make it because he was such a small player. So I think people underestimated him a bit because of that, and it allowed him to sort of just play so brilliantly. And because he'd played in Italy as well, where most players hadn't, and they kicked him all over the pitch in Italy. So he was really tough. He couldn't be knocked off the ball. He was really something.
And last one is, you might not be able to answer this.
Go ahead.
But how important was he, along with Best and Charlton, in rebuilding United after that?
Yeah, well, he was a big part. Busby brought him back from Italy, and he was such a massive part of the rebuilding because in the 1963 FA Cup final, he scored, and it was at that point that people sort of said, "Oh right, they're starting to sort of like move on from what had happened at Munich. They're starting to rebuild the team," and it was around those three guys. So I think him scoring in the FA Cup final just kind of clinched it that United were back on the way again. And
actually, one more question. What do you think it says about him as a player that he played at both United and City and was loved by both?
Yeah, we were talking about this last night because we were out, and one of the chaps we were out with is a former City player, and he was talking about how well loved he was at City. There was always the thing about the back heel that relegated United and all that sort of stuff, but it didn't seem to affect his standing with both sets of fans. He was well loved.
So many to remember. I was actually here when he did the back heel that so-called sent United down, but we were already down. I don't know, just what a true, probably gentleman of a football he was. And I had the privilege to meet him face to face and speak to him. So, and he's with his pals now, Bobby and George.
And you mentioned them. How important was he in that Holy Trinity, and just how good were they?
He was the king. As good as George Best was and Bobby Charlton, he was the king. He was the king of the Stretford then, and always will be.
He played for Man City and United. He was loved by both sets of fans. What does that say about him as a player?
What a true gentleman he was. He first played for City, didn't he? and went back to City after he'd done so well at United.
And last one, how important was he in rebuilding the squad after the disaster?
It was massively important. He was a striker that they needed. As a team, as he was put together, he was a final jigsaw puzzle, piece in the jigsaw.
I remember Georgie Best, and when he played for United, and then when he did play for City, and he scored that inevitable goal that took United down. And I was with my dad then, and it was greatest moment, and he was just such a great fella, really pleasant and nice. So I've always been a United fan, since about 10, 8, more. I like seeing him on the pitch and on the television playing and that, and then for Scotland, of course, Aberdeen.
And how good was he in the Holy Trinity?
Oh, he was one of the best. He really was. He's up there. You get a lot of good players these days, but the Trinity, I think, just tops everyone. Such a great guy.
What do you think it says about him as a player that he was able to play for Man City and play for Manchester United and be loved by both sets of fans?
Because the way he was with the fans, and he did love the Stretford end, and he's playing his football, and he loved it. So he was doing his best for which team he played for. Oh,
excellent! And how important was he in rebuilding the squad after the Munich disaster?
After the Munich disaster, imperative. It was one of the mainstays, I suppose. Rebuilding up after that, the tragedy there, getting the football back in, and fans, getting them all together.
My favourite Denis Law memory was I was 10 years old in 1963, and watching the match I was Denis Law. So on that day I scored the goal with him, and that memory has stayed with me ever since. And yes, my grandchildren know it, and he's always been the king. So,
and how important was he in that Holy Trinity?
Well, it was just so important. I mean, yes, I do believe I was probably here on the match when he first played against West Brom, 62. And I have a memory of seeing George Best come onto the pitch with his short back and sides when he first started playing. So I've been coming here, scoreboard end, didn't have a roof on it or anything like that. I lost my rattle.
Well, I mean, I remember them. I remember my dad telling me all about them, and I remember them coming to Stoke City to play the great Man United, underneath the lights. Just seeing how wonderfully skillful Denis Law and all the players were of that time. It's what we used to call proper football players.
Fantastic. So the next question is, what do you think it says about his career that he was so influential at Manchester United, having already played for Manchester City?
That's a tough one. I'd say he must have been massively loved as a player to obviously play for Manchester City, then come to Manchester United and do so well. But it says something of a player to be able to play for two rivals and be so successful. It just says something of how good he was.
You said you sort of remember that whole Trinity. Can you just tell us what you do remember of that?
I just remember the skill, the pure football. None of this. I don't quite know how to put it. I just remember them, the way they played, how skillful they were, the way it flowed, how good they were together, that sort of thing. The way the ball was passed, but the way the ball was passed forward, it never came back. Always forward with these guys, and just how skillful they were and how well they were together.
And last question.
Yeah.
Again, you might not know how to answer this.
Okay.
How important was he, along with Best and Charlton, in rebuilding the Manchester United squad?
I mean, the Munich disaster is way before my time. However, these three guys, along with Sir Matt Busby, tremendously influential, you know, to take this club from where it was after that huge disaster to where they became through the decades. These guys probably were the start of the great Manchester United that we knew of the 90s and the early 2000s.